Everyone was terrified of the giant German shepherd, but he just wanted to be loved. In a small town gripped by fear, one woman dares to step between the so-called monster and the people calling for his destruction. But the deeper she gets, the more she realizes this isn't just about a dog. Whispers of hidden motives, dangerous threats, and a truth no one wants to admit begin to close in around her. As the tension builds, she's forced to risk everything: her safety, her reputation, even her life, to protect the one soul everyone else has already condemned. What secret could be so powerful that someone would stop at nothing to keep it buried? And will saving him mean losing everything? Your comments and presence here remind me why I tell these stories. If you still believe in the healing strength of love, truth, and quiet courage, then you're the reason this channel exists. The autumn breeze rustled through the trees, carrying with it the sharp scent of fallen leaves and mounting tension. Clarissa Doyle stood at the edge of Harvey Reddick's property, her heart racing as she took in the scene before her. The massive German shepherd, Brutus, cowered at the end of his chain, his powerful body trembling despite his intimidating size. Sheriff Tom Mason stood with his hands on his hips, his weathered face creased with concern as he addressed the growing crowd of neighbors. Now folks, let's keep calm while we sort this out. Calm? Marla Pennington's voice cut through the murmurs like a knife. That beast attacked my son. We can't wait for it to happen again. She stood apart from the others, her designer boots planted firmly on the grass, arms crossed over her expensive blazer. Harvey Reddick, a man well into his 70s, gripped his wooden cane tightly. Brutus never hurt nobody. This is all lies, and you know it, Marla. His voice cracked with emotion as he defended his beloved dog. Clarissa watched Brutus carefully, drawing on her years of experience as a veterinary technician. Where others saw a dangerous animal, she recognized the signs of fear in his amber eyes and lowered tail. The dog wasn't aggressive, he was terrified. Look at the size of that monster, someone in the crowd whispered. It could kill a child. But Clarissa saw something different. She noticed how Brutus pressed himself against the ground when people moved suddenly, how his ears flattened, not in anger, but in submission. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward. Sheriff Mason, she called out, her voice steadier than she felt. I'd like to make a suggestion. All eyes turned to her. Marla's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose in obvious disdain. Oh, look who's decided to get involved. The animal lover? Clarissa ignored the jab. I work with animals every day. I can take temporary custody of Brutus until this situation is resolved. She moved closer to the dog, maintaining a calm, non-threatening posture. Are you crazy? Someone called out. That dog's dangerous. Harvey's lined face showed a glimmer of hope. You'd do that, Clarissa. She most certainly will not. Marla interrupted, stepping forward. That dog has already attacked once. We can't risk another incident just because some bleeding heart wants to play hero. Clarissa kept her voice level, though her hands trembled slightly. I have the training and facilities to keep him safely contained. This way, everyone can feel secure while we get to the bottom of what really happened. Sheriff Mason scratched his chin thoughtfully. It's not a bad idea, actually. Better than leaving things as they are. I can't believe this! Marla spat, her perfectly manicured hands clenching into fists. That animal is a menace, and you're all falling for this ridiculous proposal? Clarissa slowly approached Brutus, speaking softly. Hey, big guy. It's okay. The German shepherd watched her with wary eyes, but his tail gave a tentative wag. She knelt down, still maintaining a safe distance, and held out her hand. The crowd held its breath. Even Marla fell silent. To everyone's surprise, Brutus stretched his neck forward and delicately sniffed Clarissa's fingers. After a moment, his tongue darted out, giving her hand a gentle lick. Well, I'll be damned, Sheriff Mason muttered. Harvey's eyes welled with tears. He likes you. He's never taken to anyone but me so quick. Clarissa stood up slowly, facing the crowd, but keeping one hand reassuringly near Brutus. I'll take full responsibility. I have a secure kennel at my place, and I can monitor him 24 hours a day. At least give us a chance to find out the truth." Marla's face had turned an interesting shade of red. "This is absolutely unacceptable. I'll be speaking to my lawyer about this." She turned on her heel and stormed away, her departure doing little to dispel the tension in the air. Sheriff Mason nodded slowly. "All right, Clarissa, we'll try it your way. But you understand you're taking on a big responsibility here?" "I do," Clarissa said firmly, watching as Brutus relaxed slightly under her gentle touch. "And I promise you won't regret it." The crowd began to disperse, though many still cast nervous glances at the dog. Harvey approached Clarissa, his eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered. "Not many would stick their neck out like this." Clarissa smiled, watching as Brutus's tail began to wag with more confidence. In that moment, despite the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders and Marla's obvious fury, she knew she'd made the right choice. Something about this situation didn't add up, and she was determined to uncover the truth, for Brutus's sake and for Harvey's. Clarissa's old pickup truck rumbled down her gravel driveway, Brutus sitting nervously in the secured cargo area. She'd borrowed a heavy-duty transport kennel from the clinic, making sure the massive German Shepherd would be safe for the short journey home. Her modest two-bedroom house sat on the outskirts of town, with a large fenced backyard that usually housed recovering animals. As she parked, Mrs. Peterson from next door peered through her kitchen window, phone already pressed to her ear. Clarissa could guess who she was calling. "Come on, big guy," Clarissa said softly, opening the kennel. "Let's get you settled." Brutus emerged cautiously, his huge frame making the truck bed creak. A deep bark erupted from his throat, echoing across the quiet neighborhood. Immediately, lights flicked on in nearby houses. "It's okay," Clarissa soothed, leading him with a sturdy leash. "You're safe here." Inside, Brutus's claws clicked against the hardwood floors as he explored his new surroundings. His nose worked overtime, sniffing every corner of the living room. When he reached the soft bed Clarissa had prepared near the fireplace, his tail gave a tentative wag. "That's yours," she told him, watching as he carefully settled onto the plush cushion. His amber eyes remained alert, but the trembling she'd noticed earlier had subsided. The next morning, Clarissa headed to the veterinary clinic to gather supplies. The bell above the door chimed as she entered, and conversation in the waiting room immediately hushed. "Did you hear?" Mrs. Thompson whispered loudly to another client. "That dog nearly ripped the poor boy's arm off. My cousin's neighbor saw it happen. I heard it jump the fence and chased him for blocks." Someone else added. Clarissa's stomach tightened. She'd seen no evidence of such aggression in Brutus, and the story seemed to grow more outlandish with each retelling. Behind the front desk, her co-worker Jenny shot her a sympathetic look. Sheriff Mason stopped by earlier, she murmured as Clarissa gathered medications and supplies. "Marla Pennington's been in his office all morning, demanding he reverse his decision about the dog." "Of course she has," Clarissa sighed, checking her list. "But something's not right about this whole situation." After work, Clarissa drove to Harvey's house, hoping to get more information about Brutus's history. The old man sat on his porch, looking tired and defeated. "How's he doing?" Harvey asked, his voice gruff with emotion. "He's settling in," Clarissa replied. "But Harvey, I need to understand what happened. These stories about the attack—" "Don't ask me about that," Harvey cut her off, turning away. Just keep him safe, will you?" His distant response only deepened Clarissa's confusion. As she drove home, her mind churned with questions. Why was Harvey so reluctant to defend Brutus? What was he afraid of? Back at her house, Brutus greeted her with a gentle whine and a wagging tail. In the day she'd had him, he'd shown nothing but caution and intelligence. When she filled his water bowl, he waited patiently for permission to drink. When the mailman came, he barked once but immediately quieted at her command. That evening, as Clarissa sat on her couch reviewing patient files, Brutus lay at her feet, his massive head resting on her slippers. A knock at the door sent him to attention, but he remained calm, watching as she answered it. It was Sheriff Mason, looking uncomfortable. "Evening, Clarissa. Just checking in on things." "Come see for yourself," she offered, stepping aside. The sheriff entered cautiously, his hand instinctively near his belt. Brutus stayed in his spot, alert but non-threatening. "Well," Mason said, clearly surprised, "he seems different." "Because he's not dangerous," Clarissa stated firmly. "Sheriff, the story about the attack—" "I know what you're thinking," he interrupted, glancing around nervously. "But Marla Pennington's got a lot of influence in this town, and her boy's injury—" "What injury exactly?" Clarissa pressed. "Has anyone actually seen it?" The sheriff shifted uncomfortably. "Just be careful, Clarissa. Some people in town aren't happy about this arrangement." After he left, Clarissa sat on the floor beside Brutus, scratching behind his ears. The dog leaned into her touch, his eyes closing in contentment. "What really happened to you?" she whispered. "And why is everyone so afraid to talk about it?" Outside, a car drove by slowly, the third time that evening. Brutus's ears perked up, but he remained calm. Through her window, Clarissa could see neighbors watching, their faces worried and suspicious. The contrast between their fear and the gentle giant beside her couldn't have been starker. As night fell, Brutus's soft snoring filled the quiet house. Clarissa watched him sleep, peaceful and trusting, and knew with certainty that the frightening creature from the town's gossip and the loyal dog before her couldn't be the same animal. Something else was going on in Redford, and she was determined to find out what it was. The veterinary clinic's fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Clarissa studied the injury report on her computer screen. She'd finally convinced Jenny to let her see the medical records from the alleged attack, though her co-worker had been nervous about sharing them. "I could get in trouble for this," Jenny had whispered, glancing around the empty office. Now, alone in the back room during her lunch break, Clarissa leaned closer to the monitor. Something wasn't adding up. The bite marks documented on young Tommy Pennington's arm showed a distinctive pattern, but it didn't match what she knew about Brutus's jaw structure. After working with hundreds of dogs over the years, Clarissa had developed an eye for these details. The spacing between the canine teeth in the photographs was too narrow for a dog of Brutus's size. She pulled up another file, a dental chart from when she'd examined Brutus yesterday, and compared the measurements. "This can't be right," she muttered, reaching for her phone to take pictures of both screens. The clinic's front door chimed, and Clarissa quickly closed the files. Marla Pennington's sharp, clicking heels announced her arrival before she appeared in the doorway, perfectly coiffed in an expensive business suit. "Mrs. Pennington?" Clarissa said, keeping her voice neutral. "Can I help you?" "I thought we should have a chat," Marla replied, her smile not reaching her eyes. "About that dangerous animal you're harboring." Clarissa stood up straighter. "I'd actually like to ask you about the incident. The bite marks in Tommy's medical report. I wouldn't go poking around in private medical records if I were you." Marla cut in, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Some might consider that a violation of confidentiality. It would be a shame if someone reported it to the medical board." "Are you threatening me?" "Not at all." Marla adjusted her designer handbag. "I'm simply suggesting you stay out of other people's affairs, for your own good." The woman turned to leave, then paused. "That old farmland of Harvey's would make excellent development property, don't you think? Such a shame it's been left to rot." Before Clarissa could respond, Marla was gone, leaving behind only the sharp scent of expensive perfume and an unmistakable warning. Later that afternoon, Clarissa stopped at the local grocery store. Through the window, she spotted Harvey in the parking lot, loading bags into his truck. As she watched, he doubled over in a violent coughing fit, gripping the side of his vehicle for support. "Harvey!" She hurried over to help him. "Are you okay?" "Fine," he wheezed, straightening up slowly. Just a touch of something. But Clarissa noticed how thin he looked, how his clothes hung loose on his frame. Before she could ask more questions, he climbed into his truck and drove away. leaving her standing there with growing concern. At the sheriff's office, Deputy Rafe Coleman was just ending his shift when Clarissa arrived. The young officer had always been friendly, and today he walked her to her car, speaking in low tones. "Listen," he said, glancing around the nearly empty parking lot. "I can't say much, but you should know. Some people in town have powerful reasons for wanting that dog gone, and it's not just about the alleged attack." "What do you mean?" Rafe shifted uncomfortably. "Just be careful what questions you ask, and maybe look into who's been buying up property around Harvey's land lately." Clarissa's mind raced as she drove home. The mismatched bite marks, Marla's threat, Harvey's illness, and now Rafe's warning. Pieces of a puzzle were starting to come together, but she couldn't quite see the full picture yet. Brutus greeted her at the door with a gentle woof, his tail wagging. In the week since she'd taken him in, he'd shown nothing but intelligence and good behavior. She watched him now, playing carefully with a rope toy, his movements controlled and gentle. "You're not the monster they say you are," she told him, scratching behind his ears. "And I'm starting to think I know why they want everyone to believe you are." She spread her collected evidence on the kitchen table, the photos of the medical reports, notes about Harvey's condition, and property records she'd looked up online. The bite marks that didn't match, the sick old man with valuable land, a developer with ambitious plans. For the first time since this began, Clarissa felt certain Brutus wasn't the real threat in this story. The question was, how much danger had she put herself in by figuring that out? The next morning, Clarissa drove her old pickup truck down the bumpy dirt road leading to Harvey's farm. The autumn wind rustled through dried corn stalks in the surrounding fields, and the weathered farmhouse stood like a lonely sentinel against the grey sky. She found Harvey on his front porch, slumped in a rickety rocking chair. Even from a distance, she could see how illness had eaten away at him, his face gaunt, his shoulders hunched under a worn flannel shirt. "Harvey," she called out, climbing the creaky steps. "We need to talk." He didn't look up. "Nothing to talk about." "There's plenty to talk about." Clarissa planted herself directly in front of him. "The bite marks on Tommy Pennington's arm don't match Brutus's jaw structure. I've checked the medical records myself." Harvey's hands tightened on the chair's armrests, but he remained silent. "And I saw you coughing yesterday." She pressed on. "You're sick, aren't you? Really sick?" A harsh laugh escaped him, ending in another cough. "Figured that out, did you? How long?" 6 months. He finally met her eyes. "Cancer. Started in the lungs, spreading now." Clarissa's heart sank. "Are you getting treatment?" "Can't afford it." Harvey shifted in his chair, wincing. "Not that it matters much anymore." "What do you mean? Marla Pennington's been after this land for 2 years now, wants to build some fancy housing development." He gestured weakly at the surrounding fields, kept making offers, each one lower than the last, said she'd wait me out. Understanding dawned on Clarissa. And then suddenly Brutus is accused of attacking her son. Harvey nodded, his eyes filling with tears. "They started leaving notes in my mailbox, pictures of dead dogs, said if I didn't sell, something might happen to Brutus. That's why I kept him chained up, trying to protect him." "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Tell who?" Bitterness crept into his voice. "The sheriff's in Marla's pocket. Half the town's invested in her development projects. Nobody cares about some dying old man and his dangerous dog." Clarissa sat down on the porch step, processing everything. "So the attack accusation. Complete lie." Harvey's voice cracked. "But who's going to believe me? Marla's got everyone convinced Brutus is some kind of monster. Her boy Tommy was probably coached to go along with it. Poor kid scared to death of his mother." A truck rumbled past on the road, and Harvey tensed until it was gone. "I'm too tired to fight anymore. Maybe I should just take their offer and be done with it." "No." Clarissa stood up, anger burning in her chest. "That's exactly what they want. They're using Brutus to pressure you, threatening an innocent animal to steal your land." "What's the point of fighting?" Harvey asked wearily. I won't be around much longer anyway. The point is justice, Clarissa insisted. The point is not letting them get away with this. Brutus doesn't deserve to be destroyed for their greed, and you don't deserve to spend your last months being bullied and threatened. She knelt beside his chair, her voice softening. Let me help you, Harvey. Let me prove what they're doing. Why? His eyes searched her face. Why do you care so much? Because it's wrong. Because Brutus is a good dog who trusts and loves you. Because no one should be able to use fear and lies to take what they want. Harvey was quiet for a long moment, watching a pair of cardinals flit between the bare branches of an old oak tree. Finally, he reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a folded envelope. This came yesterday, he said, handing it to her. Another threat. Maybe it'll help prove something. Clarissa took the envelope carefully. I promise you, Harvey, we're going to expose what Marla's doing. She won't get away with this. For the first time, a spark of hope flickered in the old man's tired eyes. Be careful, he warned. Marla Pennington's got a lot of power in this town. She won't like anyone digging into her business. I know. Clarissa squeezed his hand gently. But sometimes doing what's right means standing up to people with power, and I'm not afraid of her. As she drove home, the threatening letter safely tucked in her purse, Clarissa's mind raced with plans. The connection between Brutus's situation and Marla's development scheme was now crystal clear, a ruthless attempt to force Harvey's hand by any means necessary. The question was, how to prove it? Back at her house, Clarissa sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by papers and photos. Her hands trembled slightly as she dialed Rafe Coleman's number. After 3 rings, his familiar voice answered. Deputy Coleman. Rafe, it's Clarissa. I need your help. She glanced at Brutus, who lay peacefully in the corner. I've uncovered something about Marla Pennington, and it's bigger than just Brutus. Meet me at Carter's Diner in 20 minutes, he said quietly. Back booth. The diner was nearly empty when Clarissa slid into the worn vinyl booth. Rafe joined her moments later, his deputy's uniform crisp despite the late hour. She spread out Harvey's threatening letters on the table between them. Look at these. She kept her voice low. Marla's been pressuring Harvey to sell his land. The whole thing with Brutus, it's all fabricated to force him out. Rafe studied the letters, his jaw tightening. This is serious, Clarissa. Threatening harm to an animal, possible fraud with the attack report. He looked up. But proving it won't be easy. Marla's got influence everywhere. That's why I need your help. Can you keep an eye on her? Notice who she meets with, any unusual patterns? He nodded slowly. I can do that, but be careful, if she realizes you're investigating her. I know the risks. Clarissa gathered the letters. I'm already documenting everything about Brutus, videos of his training, daily behavior logs, evaluations from other vets. I'll prove he's not dangerous. But Marla was already moving against her. The next morning's newspaper carried a front-page story. Local woman houses dangerous dog despite community concerns. The article painted Clarissa as reckless and unstable, quoting unnamed concerned citizens about her judgment. Clarissa's hands shook as she read the piece. She knew exactly where those quotes had come from. Looking out her kitchen window, she saw neighbors hurrying past her house, throwing nervous glances at her fence. That evening, while walking Brutus in her backyard, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. Fresh tire tracks in the soft earth behind her property. They hadn't been there that morning. Brutus's head snapped up, a low growl rumbling in his chest, his eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the fence. Clarissa strained to see what had caught his attention, but there was only shadow and silence. Someone's watching us, aren't they, boy? She whispered, scratching behind his ears. His continued alertness confirmed her suspicions. Inside, she double-checked all her locks and drew the curtains. Brutus positioned himself near the front door, his protective instincts in full force. Rather than frightening her, his presence was reassuring. This gentle giant who everyone feared was now her guardian. For the next few days, Clarissa threw herself into documenting Brutus's progress. She filmed him playing gently with her neighbor's cat through the fence, responding perfectly to commands, and showing nothing but patience when startled by loud noises. Each video was another piece of evidence against Marla's campaign of fear. Rafe called with updates every evening. "She's been meeting with council members," he reported one night. "And I've seen her son Tommy. The kid looks scared, Clarissa, not of Brutus, but of his mother. We need to keep gathering evidence," she said, watching Brutus doze peacefully on his bed. "Every day she doesn't get her way, she gets more desperate. She might make a mistake." "Just watch your back," Rafe warned. "I've noticed some of her associates driving past your place at odd hours." The warning proved prescient. That night, Clarissa woke to Brutus's deep bark. Peering through her bedroom window, she caught the flash of headlights turning quickly away from her house. The message was clear. They were letting her know she was being watched. Instead of frightening her into submission, the surveillance made Clarissa more determined. The next morning, she installed security cameras around her property. If they wanted to play games of intimidation, she'd make sure every move they made was recorded. "They're trying to scare me, boy," she told Brutus as they sat together on her front porch. "But we're not going to let them win. We're going to show everyone who you really are, and who they really are too." Brutus rested his massive head on her lap, his amber eyes full of trust. Looking at him, Clarissa felt her resolve strengthen. The stakes were rising, and she might be in danger herself now, but she wouldn't back down. Not when she knew the truth. Not when an innocent dog's life and a dying man's dignity hung in the balance. Dark clouds rolled over Redford like an ominous blanket, bringing with them the first heavy drops of rain. Clarissa watched from her kitchen window as the storm intensified, transforming her backyard into a blur of wind-whipped trees and sheeting rain. Thunder crashed overhead, making the windows rattle. "It's okay, Brutus," she called out, noticing the dog's anxious pacing near the back door. "We'll stay nice and dry inside tonight." But when she went to check on him 15 minutes later, her heart stopped. The back gate stood wide open, swinging wildly in the wind. Clarissa rushed out into the downpour, her clothes instantly soaked. The gate's latch had been cleanly broken, not torn or rusted through, but deliberately sabotaged. "Brutus!" Her voice was swallowed by another crack of thunder. "Brutus, come!" Panic seized her chest as she swept her flashlight beam across the yard. Fresh paw prints led from the gate into the street, already filling with rain. Without hesitation, Clarissa grabbed her rain jacket and ran after them. The streets of Redford were deserted, rain hammering against empty parked cars and dark storefronts. Her flashlight caught Brutus's massive prints in the mud, leading away from town toward the woods. Each flash of lightning illuminated the tree line ahead, casting strange shadows that made her heart race faster. "Please be okay," she whispered, pushing through branches heavy with rain. The beam of her flashlight bounced off wet leaves and tree trunks, creating disorienting patterns in the darkness. She could barely see 10 feet ahead. A branch snapped somewhere to her left. Clarissa froze, listening intently. Through the sound of rain on leaves, she heard movement. Not the four-legged gait of a dog, but human footsteps trying to be quiet. She killed her flashlight immediately, letting her eyes adjust to the darkness. Another flash of lightning revealed a silhouette moving through the trees ahead. The unmistakable shape of a rifle was cradled in their arms. Clarissa's blood ran cold. She recognized that shape. It was Pete Martinez, one of the men who often did odd jobs for Marla Pennington. She'd seen him hanging around Harvey's property in the weeks before the alleged attack. Thunder rolled overhead as she crept closer, trying to keep trees between herself and Martinez. Her foot found a twig, and the snap seemed to echo through the woods. Martinez whirled around, rifle raised. Clarissa ducked behind a massive oak tree, her heart pounding so hard she was sure he must hear it. The rain drummed against her jacket as she pressed herself against the rough bark. "Come on out, you stupid mutt!" Martinez's voice carried through the rain. "Make this easy on both of us." Anger surged through Clarissa's veins, replacing her fear. They'd broken her gate on purpose, driving Brutus into the woods where they could quietly solve the problem without witnesses. The whole thing had been planned. A low growl cut through the storm's noise. Brutus was close. Martinez moved toward the sound, rifle ready. Clarissa had to act fast. She fumbled for her phone with trembling fingers, quickly dialing Rafe's number. The call went straight to voicemail. There was no time to try again. Lightning flashed again, and there was Brutus, a massive dark shape at the base of a fallen tree, 30 feet away. Martinez was moving into position, raising the rifle to his shoulder. "Stop!" Clarissa's voice rang out as she stepped into view, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness to illuminate Martinez. "Put the gun down." Martinez spun toward her, surprise and anger warring on his face. "Get out of here!" he snarled. "This doesn't concern you." "That's my dog you're hunting," Clarissa said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "And I've got you on camera right now, Martinez. What do you think Marla will do when the footage of her hired gun trying to murder an innocent dog goes public?" It was a lie. Her phone was still clutched uselessly in her pocket, but in the darkness and confusion of the storm, Martinez couldn't know that. "Brutus, come!" she called out firmly. The German Shepherd immediately responded, circling wide around Martinez to reach her side. His fur was soaked, but he was unharmed. Martinez kept his rifle trained on them, rainwater streaming down his face. "You're making a big mistake," he warned. "Ms. Pennington doesn't like people interfering with her business. And I don't like people trying to murder my dog." Clarissa shot back. "Lower the rifle, or tomorrow everyone in town sees exactly what kind of person Marla Pennington really is." The standoff stretched for several long seconds, broken only by the continuing storm. Finally, Martinez lowered his weapon. "This isn't over," he spat, backing away into the darkness. Clarissa waited until she could no longer hear his footsteps before sagging against a tree, her legs weak with relief. Brutus pressed against her side, his warm presence a comfort in the cold rain. "Good boy," she whispered, hugging his wet fur. "Let's go home." The rain pounded mercilessly as Martinez kept his rifle trained on them, his finger hovering near the trigger. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the hatred in his eyes. Clarissa's heart thundered in her chest, but she knew what she had to do. Without hesitation, she stepped directly between Brutus and the rifle. The massive German Shepherd whined softly behind her, but stayed close. "Get out of the way," Martinez growled, adjusting his aim toward her chest. "Don't make this worse than it has to be." Clarissa's legs trembled, but she planted them firmly in the mud. "If you want to hurt him," she said, her voice quavering but growing stronger with each word, "you'll have to shoot through me first." Rain streamed down her face as she stared down the barrel of the rifle. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she wouldn't abandon Brutus. Not now, not ever. "You're crazy, lady," Martinez said, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. "This is just a dog." "He's not just a dog," Clarissa shot back. "He's innocent, and you know it. This whole thing, the fake attack, the pressure on Harvey. It's all part of Marla's scheme, isn't it?" Martinez's finger tightened on the trigger. "Last warning. Move." "No." The word came out firm and clear, carrying over the storm's fury. Brutus pressed against her legs, his warm presence giving her strength. His low growl vibrated through her body as he kept his eyes locked on Martinez, ready to protect her as she protected him. A sudden movement in the darkness caught Clarissa's eye. Before she could process what was happening, a figure burst from the shadows with surprising speed. Harvey Reddick, his face twisted with rage, slammed into Martinez's side with the force of years of pent-up fury. The rifle discharged harmlessly into the air as both men went down hard in the mud. Harvey, despite his illness, fought with desperate strength, grappling for control of the weapon. Martinez's elbow caught him in the face, drawing blood, but Harvey held on. "You won't hurt them!" Harvey roared, driving his fist into Martinez's jaw. "Not the dog, not her, not anyone else!" The two men rolled in the mud, trading brutal blows. Martinez was younger and stronger, but Harvey fought with the reckless abandon of someone who had nothing left to lose. Rain and blood mixed on their faces as they struggled for the rifle. Clarissa started forward to help, but Brutus's bark stopped her. Through the sheets of rain, she saw flashlight beams cutting through the trees. Heavy footsteps splashed through puddles, approaching fast. "Police! Drop the weapon!" Rafe Coleman's voice boomed through the darkness. He emerged from the trees with his gun drawn, the sheriff right behind him. Martinez froze, his hands still gripping the rifle. Harvey used the moment to wrench the weapon away, tossing it clear of the fight. "On the ground, hands where I can see them," the sheriff ordered, training his flashlight on Martinez. As Rafe moved in to handcuff Martinez, he caught Clarissa's eye. "Got your voicemail?" he said. "Sorry we took so long. Had to track your phone's location in this weather." Clarissa sagged with relief, the adrenaline draining from her body. Brutus nuzzled her hand, and she scratched behind his ears, her fingers trembling. "Good boy," she whispered. "We're safe now. We're both safe." Harvey pushed himself to his feet, wiping blood from his nose. His clothes were caked with mud, but his eyes shone with a fire she hadn't seen before. "Couldn't let you face him alone," he said gruffly. "Not after everything you've done for Brutus, for both of us." The sheriff helped Martinez to his feet, securing him firmly. "We'll need statements from all of you," he said. "And I think Ms. Pennington will have some explaining to do as well." Clarissa nodded, but her focus remained on Brutus. The dog who had been labeled dangerous, who had faced so much fear and hatred, pressed close against her leg. Not in fear, but in trust and protection. She had risked everything to save him, but in that moment, seeing the loyalty and love in his amber eyes, she knew she would do it again in a heartbeat. The rain continued to fall, but its rhythm had changed from threatening to cleansing, washing away the mud and fear of the confrontation. Together, Clarissa and Brutus stood in the storm, their bond forged stronger than ever in the crucible of that night's events. The Redford Municipal Building's small conference room buzzed with tension as Tommy Pennington, Marla's 10-year-old son, fidgeted in his chair. His mother sat beside him, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the wooden table. The sheriff leaned forward, his weathered face kind but serious. "Tommy," he said gently, "I need you to tell us exactly what happened that day. The whole truth." The boy's eyes darted to his mother, then down to his hands. Clarissa, watching from her position near the wall, noticed how his shoulders trembled slightly. Brutus lay quietly at her feet, his presence already accepted in the building after weeks of proving his gentle nature. Tommy took a shaky breath. "I wasn't supposed to be there," he whispered. "Mom always said to stay away from Old Man Reddick's place, but—" He swallowed hard. "I wanted to explore. I climbed over the back fence where it was broken." Marla's fingers stopped their drumming. "Tommy, you don't have to—" "Yes, he does," Rafe interrupted firmly, stepping forward with a manila folder in his hands. "Please continue, Tommy." "I was climbing on some old fence posts," the boy continued, his voice growing stronger. "Brutus started barking, and it scared me. I slipped and fell onto some broken boards." His hand unconsciously moved to his side where the injury had been. "Brutus never came near me. He just barked from his chain." The silence in the room was deafening. Harvey, who had been standing quietly in the corner, closed his eyes and exhaled slowly. "But you told everyone Brutus attacked you," the sheriff prompted. Tommy's lower lip quivered. "Mom said, she said if I told people the dog bit me, it would help her get the land she wanted. She said Mr. Reddick was being stubborn, and this would make him sell." Marla surged to her feet. "This is ridiculous. He's just a confused child." "I don't think so, Miss Pennington." Rafe cut in, opening his folder. He spread several documents across the table. "We have phone records showing multiple calls between you and Martinez in the weeks leading up to both the false accusation and last night's attempt on Brutus's life." He laid down more papers. "We also have bank transfers to Martinez's account from a shell company registered in your name." Clarissa watched as the color drained from Marla's face. The woman's carefully constructed facade began to crack. "You orchestrated this whole thing," Clarissa said quietly, her voice carrying in the tense room. "The false attack story, the pressure on Harvey, and when that wasn't enough, you sent Martinez to eliminate Brutus completely." The sheriff stood, his expression grave. "Marla Pennington, you're under arrest for conspiracy, attempted animal cruelty, and filing false police reports." He nodded to a deputy waiting by the door. "We'll also be picking up Martinez from holding to add attempted assault with a deadly weapon to his charges." As the deputy began reading Marla her rights, she turned to Clarissa with venom in her eyes. "You couldn't just mind your own business, could you? You had to play hero for a worthless dog." Brutus lifted his head at her tone, but remained calm. Clarissa rested her hand on his broad head. "He was never worthless," she replied evenly. "And the truth would have come out eventually. You did this to yourself." They watched as Marla was led away, her designer heels clicking angrily on the floor. Tommy remained in his chair, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry," he whispered, looking at Harvey. "I'm really sorry." The old man pushed himself away from the wall and approached the boy. His voice was rough but gentle. "You told the truth today, son. That's what matters." Outside the municipal building, word spread quickly through the small town. Clarissa could see the shift happening in real time. The way people stopped to really look at Brutus now, seeing him without the lens of fear and lies. Some even smiled tentatively as she walked him home. Harvey fell into step beside them, shaking his head in amazement. "You did it," he said. "You actually did it. Took on the whole town and won." "We did it," Clarissa corrected him, watching Brutus trot contentedly between them, "all of us together." The truth had finally come out, clearing away months of suspicion and fear like sunshine breaking through storm clouds. Brutus had been vindicated, and Marla's scheme had crumbled in the face of facts and justice. As they walked through town, Clarissa realized that sometimes the biggest victories came not from fighting, but from simply standing firm for what was right until the truth could no longer be denied. The autumn sun cast long shadows across Clarissa's front porch as Harvey's old pickup truck rattled into her driveway. Brutus's ears perked up at the familiar sound, and his tail began to wag. The big German shepherd had grown even more attached to Harvey during his visits over the past few weeks, though he now clearly saw Clarissa's home as his safe haven. Clarissa stepped outside, noting how Harvey moved more slowly than usual as he climbed out of his truck. His face looked drawn, and his breathing seemed labored even from the short walk to her porch. Still, he managed a warm smile when Brutus trotted over to greet him. "Hey there, old friend," Harvey said softly, scratching behind Brutus's ears. The dog leaned into his touch, amber eyes half closed in contentment. "Would you like to come in?" Clarissa offered, gesturing toward the door. "I just made some fresh coffee." Harvey shook his head. "Better if we talk out here. I need the fresh air anyway." He lowered himself carefully onto one of the wooden porch chairs, pulling an envelope from his jacket pocket. Clarissa sat down across from him, watching as he smoothed the envelope against his knee. Brutus settled between them, his huge head resting on Harvey's foot. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Harvey began, his voice rougher than usual. "About Brutus, about the future." He paused, coughing into his handkerchief. When he continued, his words came slower, more deliberate. "I've always thought nobody could love him like I do. Figured I was the only one who'd ever understand him properly." Clarissa remained quiet, sensing there was more to come. The autumn breeze rustled through the nearby trees, carrying the scent of fallen leaves. "But I was wrong," Harvey continued, meeting her eyes. "What you did for him, standing up to the whole town, risking your own safety, that's more than just understanding. That's real love." He held out the envelope with a slightly trembling hand. "These are his papers. I've signed him over to you, permanently." Clarissa's breath caught in her throat. "Harvey, Please," he interrupted gently. "Let me finish. This isn't easy for me." He reached down to stroke Brutus's fur. "My doctor says the cancer's spreading faster than they thought. I've maybe got 6 months, if I'm lucky." His voice wavered slightly. "I can't risk Brutus ending up alone or with someone who doesn't understand him. He needs you, Clarissa. You're his future now." Tears welled in Clarissa's eyes as she accepted the envelope. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything. Just promise me you'll keep loving him like you have been." Harvey's eyes were bright with unshed tears of his own. "Promise me he'll always have a home where he's understood." "I promise," Clarissa whispered, her hand finding Brutus's fur. The dog looked between them, sensing the emotion in their voices. Harvey nodded, seemingly satisfied. "You know, when all this started, I thought I was losing everything. My health, my land, and now my best friend." He managed a small smile. "But sometimes losing something means it finds exactly where it's supposed to be." Brutus chose that moment to shift position, pressing himself against Harvey's legs while reaching out to put one paw on Clarissa's knee, as if physically connecting them. The gesture brought fresh tears to both their eyes. "He's not going to understand at first why I stopped coming around," Harvey said quietly. "You don't have to stop coming," Clarissa replied firmly. "This is still your family. Both of us are." She reached across and squeezed his hand. "We'll face whatever comes together." Harvey squeezed back, his weathered hand strong despite his illness. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Brutus, each lost in their own thoughts about the future. The trust Harvey had placed in her felt both overwhelming and right, like a key fitting perfectly into a lock. The big German shepherd looked up at them with his intelligent eyes, and Clarissa wondered if somehow he understood the significance of this moment, how love sometimes meant letting go, and how family could be found in the most unexpected places. She held the envelope containing Brutus's papers close to her heart, feeling the weight of the responsibility and the rightness of it all at once. The late autumn morning dawned clear and crisp, painting the fields around Redford in shades of gold and amber. Clarissa stood on her back porch, watching Brutus explore the yard with confident strides. The transformation in him over the past few weeks had been remarkable. His coat, once dull and matted, now gleamed in the sunlight, thick and healthy. His muscles rippled smoothly beneath the sable and black fur, no longer tense with constant fear. She smiled as he trotted over to her, tail wagging, his amber eyes bright and alert. Gone was the trembling, defensive animal she'd first encountered. In his place stood a proud, balanced dog who had finally found his place in the world. "Ready for our morning run, boy?" Clarissa asked, reaching down to scratch his ears. Brutus responded with an eager bark, dancing in place as she grabbed his leash. Though she rarely needed it anymore, his recall had become nearly perfect, another sign of how far they'd come together. They set off down the familiar path that led through Harvey's property. Harvey had insisted they keep using the route, saying the sight of them running together lifted his spirits. As they approached his house, Clarissa saw him settled in his usual spot on the porch, wrapped in a warm blanket against the morning chill. "Morning, Harvey," she called out, pausing at his gate. Brutus sat perfectly at her side, his tail sweeping the ground as he watched his former owner. Harvey raised a hand in greeting, his smile tired but genuine. "You two are looking good today," he said, his voice a bit weaker than it had been even a week ago. "Perfect morning for a run." "Want to join us for a bit?" Clarissa asked, though she already knew the answer. It had become part of their morning ritual. She would ask, and he would decline with a gentle shake of his head. "Not today," he replied, true to form. "But you go on. Let him run free through those backfields. He loves that." Clarissa nodded, understanding the deeper meaning in his words. Harvey had once kept Brutus chained out of fear, fear of threats, fear of losing him, fear of what others might do. Now he took joy in seeing the dog run free, as if Brutus's freedom somehow made up for his own increasing limitations. They continued past Harvey's house to the sprawling fields beyond. Here, where the land opened up into endless possibilities, Clarissa unclipped Brutus's leash. The big German shepherd looked up at her, waiting for permission. "Go on," she encouraged. "Run!" Brutus took off like a shot, his powerful legs carrying him through the tall grass. He ran in wide circles, doubling back occasionally to check on Clarissa before shooting off again, his joy obvious in every movement. She began to run too, feeling the crisp air fill her lungs as Brutus matched his pace to hers. Together they covered the familiar circuit, past the old oak tree, around the pond where ducks scattered at their approach, through the narrow trail in the woods where Brutus had once faced down a gunman. That spot no longer held fear for either of them. They had transformed it, like so much else, through persistence and trust. As they looped back toward Harvey's property, Clarissa saw him standing at his door. He lifted his hand in a final wave before disappearing inside, moving slower than he had just weeks ago. Her heart tightened, knowing their morning greetings wouldn't last forever. But Harvey had taught her something profound about love. Sometimes it meant letting go, and sometimes it meant holding on tighter to what remained. Near the edge of Harvey's property, Clarissa slowed to a walk, catching her breath. Brutus trotted to her side, pressing against her leg in a gesture that had become wonderfully familiar. She knelt down, wrapping her arms around his thick neck, burying her face in his fur. "Look how far we've come," she whispered to him. Brutus turned his head to lick her cheek, his eyes full of trust and devotion. In that moment, kneeling in the morning sunshine with Brutus, Clarissa realized how much she had changed too. The woman who had first stepped forward to defend a chained, frightened dog would never have imagined she could stand against an entire town's prejudice. She would never have thought she had the strength to face down armed threats or uncover painful truths. But saving Brutus had awakened something in her, a fierce determination that refused to let fear dictate what was right. She had discovered a well of courage she never knew she possessed, and a willingness to stand firm when it mattered most. The resolution that had started with one dog had rippled out to change not just Brutus's life, but her own identity. Brutus nudged her gently, his way of saying it was time to move on. Clarissa stood, brushing grass from her knees, and looked back toward Harvey's house. The morning sun caught the windows, making them shine like beacons. Soon enough, she would need to be brave again, to face the loss that was coming. But for now, she had this moment, this perfect morning with a dog who had helped her become more than she ever thought she could be. "Come on, boy," she said softly. "Let's head home." They walked together, matching stride for stride, no longer bound by chains of fear or doubt, free to move forward into whatever tomorrow might bring, knowing they would face it together. Thank you for watching. Stories like this remind us who we are. If something touched your heart, go ahead and subscribe. I'll be back tomorrow with another story that just might stay with you.